You changed your mind about the same decision 6 times today. Not because you were missing information. You had all of it. It's that every time you came back to it, you started from zero. I want to tell you what is actually happening in your head when that happens. There is a real system involved. It has a name, and researchers have watched it go dim inside an MRI scanner. And once you know what it is, one thing gets very clear. Thinking about it longer is the worst available strategy. Stay with me. This one is useful tonight. Here is what it looks like from the inside. You write the list. You look at the list. You delete the list. You type the message. You read it back. It sounds wrong. You delete it and type a shorter one. That one sounds cold. You put the phone face down. There are 2 options. Only 2. You have known both of them for a week, and you still cannot pick one. You replay the same conversation 10 times, and here is the strange part. The conclusion is different every time, not slightly different. On one pass, you were right. On the next pass, you were the problem. Same conversation, same memory, different answer, depending on which run you are on. And when somebody asks what's wrong, you can't answer. Not because you're hiding it, because you are not stuck on one thing. You are stuck on something much further down than that. You are stuck on where am I? I do this too. Last month I rewrote the same 4 sentences of an email 4 times and then closed the laptop without sending it. Nothing in that email was difficult. I just couldn't tell whether the version in front of me was good or terrible, and by the 4th pass I couldn't remember what the first version had said. Now here's the half of this that almost nobody mentions, and it's the half that gives the whole thing away. The things right in front of you get done. You answer the email that has an obvious answer. You show up to the meeting. You wash the dishes. You get through the day, and to anyone watching, you look completely functional, because you are. So whatever is failing here, it isn't execution. It's position. You have a map in your head. That's not a metaphor. It's hardware. In 1971, John O'Keefe found cells in the brain that fire when an animal is in one particular spot in a room and stay quiet everywhere else. Place cells. Then in 2005, May-Britt Moser and Edvard Moser found the other half, cells that fire in a repeating triangular pattern across an entire space, like graph paper laid over the floor. Grid cells. In 2014, the 3 of them shared the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine for their discoveries of cells that constitute a positioning system in the brain. Grid cells do one specific thing, and it's the thing I want you to hold on to. They let you keep track of where you are without looking at anything. It's called path integration. You walked about this far. You turned about this much. So the door is now roughly back over there. No landmarks required. It's the system that lets you cross your own dark house at 3 in the morning and put your hand on the light switch without feeling along the wall first. It is the only system you have that can answer where am I when there is nothing outside to check against. In March of 2026, a team at Ruhr University Bochum in Germany published a study in PLOS Biology. I want to be careful about what they actually found, because the popular write-ups got one part of it backwards, and the correction is the interesting bit. 39 healthy young men came in twice. On one visit, they were given 20 milligrams of cortisol, that's the stress hormone, administered directly as a dose. On the other visit, a placebo. Then, inside an MRI scanner, they moved through a virtual meadow. Walk to a tree. The tree disappears. Walk to the next one. That one disappears too. Now, with no help, go back to where you started. That's path integration. That's the entire test. Under cortisol, they were clearly worse at it. And in the scanner, the grid-like signal in the right entorhinal cortex, the one the researchers could measure cleanly on day 1 under placebo, was weakened. Now the correction. When this study got picked up again in August, the write-up said the damage was worst when there were no landmarks to go by. That's the comforting version because it implies the fix is to put up a signpost. The paper says something else. It says the impairment happened independent of the distance traveled and independent of the presence of spatial cues. Landmarks or no landmarks. Same damage. I'm giving you the paper's version instead of the headlines version, and I'll be straight with you, the paper's version is worse news, not better. A signpost doesn't save it. And while I'm being straight with you, here's the rest. This is 39 young men. They were given a drug, not an actual bad month. The 2 visits happen in an order, and the authors say that could confound the treatment with the order, and the authors state plainly that they can't tell whether cortisol disrupted the grid code itself or only made it less consistent. So this is not proof that stress makes you stupid. Nobody has shown that, and I'm not going to tell you they have. What it does show is narrower, and I think more useful, your sense of position as a running measurement, and running measurements can drift. Now the part that explains the strange thing from earlier. There was one more result. When landmarks were available, cortisol increased activity in the right caudate nucleus. Different structure, different job. In 2003, Giuseppe Ariaria, Veronique Bolbot, and their colleagues showed that people solve the same navigation problem in two completely different ways. One group builds a map. They use landmarks, they hold the layout, they know how the pieces relate to each other. That group leans on the hippocampus. The other group memorizes a sequence of turns. Left at the fountain, second right, past the red door. That group leans on the caudate nucleus. So when the map system goes soft, the brain doesn't stop. It hands the job over to the turn-by-turn system. And here's what matters about that. The turn-by-turn system does not need to know where you are. It only needs to know what's next, which is exactly what your week feels like. Next email, next meeting, next thing on the list, all of it handled. And underneath all of it, no answer whatsoever to the question of where any of this is going. You never broke. You got switched over. And here's where it gets almost eerie, because the other half of this was written down 17 years earlier by one of the same people. In 2009, Lars Schwab and Oliver Wolf published a paper called Stress Prompts Habit Behavior in Humans. They stressed people, then trained them to work for a food reward. Then they made that reward worthless by letting people eat that food until they didn't want any more of it. The unstressed people stopped working for it. Obviously, it wasn't worth anything now. The stressed people kept going. That's the finding everyone quotes. Here's the second half, which almost nobody quotes. Stress also reduced how clearly people could state what their own actions were getting them. Not just doing it anyway, and being less able to say why. Oliver Wolf is a co-author on that 2009 paper and on the 2006 grid cell paper. Same lab, same question, 2 decades apart, arriving at the same shape from 2 different directions. Stress doesn't shut you down. It puts you on autopilot, and autopilot flies well. It just doesn't know the destination. Now I want to give you what I think is the actual point of all this. And it isn't that you get lost. It's that you don't get a warning. When an instrument drifts, it doesn't display a message telling you it has drifted. It keeps handing you numbers in the same font with the same confidence. So when your sense of position goes soft, it doesn't feel like reduced judgment. That's the whole trap. It feels like clarity. It feels like finally, at 1 in the morning in the worst week of the year, you are seeing the entire thing for what it really is. Which means the conclusions that arrive during weeks like that. I made the wrong call. I wasted 3 years. This isn't going to get better. Those didn't show up because you finally got honest with yourself. They showed up because they were calculated on a map that was temporarily running soft. And I want to be careful here, because I'm not going to sit here and tell you those conclusions are wrong. Some of them might be completely right. You might genuinely need to leave. You might genuinely have made the wrong call. I don't know your life, and I'm not going to pretend the hard things aren't real. I'm saying one thing about them, and it's about timing, not content. That was not the week to take the measurement. Which brings me to a line that is almost 2,000 years old. Epictetus, in the Discourses, Book 2, Chapter 18, he's talking about impressions, the things that arrive in your head already looking like facts. And he says, in Old Father's translation, wait for me a little, impression. Allow me to see who you are and what you are an impression of. Allow me to put you to the test. People usually read that as advice about anger. Stay calm, count to 10. Read it here and it's something much more specific. It's a claim about timing. He isn't telling you to stop acting. He's telling you to delay exactly one thing, the moment where you agree that what you're seeing is true. And the first line of that same chapter is this: every habit and faculty is confirmed and strengthened by the corresponding actions, that of walking by walking, that of running by running, which is, more or less, the caudate nucleus. Repeat the turns, and the turns become the route. He got there without a scanner. So here's the thing to actually do, and it's deliberately small. During a stretch like this, keep working. Autopilot is fine. Answer the emails, go to the meeting, wash the dishes. None of that requires knowing where you are. But when one of the big ones shows up, what am I doing with my life? Is this the wrong person? Have I wasted the last 3 years? Write it down and don't answer it. Write it down so you don't lose it, because some of those are the right questions and they deserve a real answer later. Just not tonight, not from here, not with the instrument reading soft. The variable is delay. Not willpower, not intensity, delay. Go back to that decision you changed your mind about 6 times. You weren't failing to think it through. You thought it through 6 times. That was the problem. You were recalculating the same route on a map that was temporarily off. And every recalculation felt exactly as convincing as the last one, which is precisely what you would expect if the map were the thing that kept moving. Nothing feels clear right now because the thing that makes it feel clear is under load. It comes back. That's the ordinary, unglamorous, true part of this. The cortisol clears, the signal sharpens, and the decision that felt impossible on Tuesday turns out 2 weeks later to be reasonably obvious. Not because you got smarter, because you could finally see where you were standing. You don't need to think harder tonight. You just need to wait until you can see the ground.